What's up, everybody? This is Chris Nichols, and you're listening to an episode of the Nichols and Dimes Show featuring Emily Hayden. Enjoy. Hey, Emily.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's such an honor.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to get to know you more, too.
Likewise. Yeah, well, guys, let me give a quick intro before we get into Emily Hayden. So I'm here with Emily Hayden, who is host of the Evolve with Emily show, a podcast with over 2 million downloads covering all topics personal development. She also hosts wellness retreats around the world. Emily is also known for her success as an IFBB bikini pro, lifestyle YouTube vlogger, and mentorship coach. She's originally from Houston, attended Texas A&M, and is currently based in San Diego. So let me just start with something real quick about Emily, guys. I was just having a hell of a time with my equipment and running into some technical difficulties. And I feel like this embodies what Emily's all about, the way she handled it. First of all, Emily is the biggest guest I've ever had as far as being well known. Yeah, yeah, you definitely are. And
cool.
So I wanted to be very prepared. My stuff wasn't working. And you made me feel so comfortable about it because you've been there before, right? You've been doing your podcast for, gosh, how long now?
Since December 2018.
Wow. Okay. And she just recommended that we do a meditation beforehand. And it completely changed the energy out of me. So thank you so much for that recommendation.
Of course. Meditation is such a powerful tool, and it's always available to us. And even it's crazy how just 5 minutes can completely change your state.
I know. It is incredible. And I mean, same thing with all this kind of stuff, right? Breath work, cold plunges. I mean, these are all things that I know it's a big part of what you're about and your routine, right? And I'm excited to get into how you leverage those things to do what you do and be your best and continue to improve in life and continue to grow, right? But I want to give a bit of a background on who you are and your life growing up and how you got to where you are today. And of course, want to dig into some deeper topics, right? Your philosophy on certain things, how you've built your brand, your businesses. Of course, my show is about entrepreneurship, so that's really what I try to focus on. But you're very good at diving deep into spiritual connection, personal development, in all different types of forms. So I definitely want to spend some time on some of that with you, however that might come out.
Yeah, awesome. I'm so excited for that. And just a little side note before we dive in. Oftentimes people will hire a business mentor and they're seeking new strategies in their life, but what they really need to make progress in their business isn't a new strategy. It's actually to work on themselves. It's to heal parts of themselves that are holding them back from stepping into who they can be or who they could be. So oftentimes people have a lack mentality that they've never addressed. Maybe it comes from the way that they were raised, what they experienced and saw growing up. And if they never address it, they're going to try every business strategy in the world, and they will always self-sabotage and find themselves not able to follow through on things, or just little ways that they're holding themselves back that they're unaware of. It'll feel like it's never working. Why is this, not working for me? Yeah. And the truth is there's actually just some things internally that if they would address those things, work on those things, they would see exponential business growth. So for the business-minded people out there, one of the most amazing things you could do for your business is work on yourself.
I love that. That's incredible. And that's actually come up in a previous podcast, but it was a profound point that a lot of people, it's just such a true thing, is getting past those internal blockers instead of being overly tactical, right, about what might be stopping my business from growing and moving forward, throwing sand against the wall, right?
Totally.
So I love that. I love that you said that.
Thank
precedence.
You. Yeah. So where do you want to start? Where do you want me?
Yeah. So I'm curious about your life growing up in Texas. your dad was in fitness, right?
Yes, yeah.
So what was your introduction to fitness through your dad and whatever else?
Yeah, I love this. Thank you. So yeah, I grew up in Houston, Texas. I have a large family. Originally, there was 5 of us kids.
Okay.
So I have 4 siblings. Now we have 2 stepsisters, and so there's 7 of us total. Big family. I've always loved having a big family. Very competitive.
Yeah.
Like my dad used to take us to the track on the weekends, and we would just like come up with all these competitions with each other.
Okay.
Everything was a competition in my house. Partly because I think when my dad had us, he like, for example, he used to tell us to get ready for bed and say whoever had the fastest time of showering and actually being clean and brushing your teeth and getting dressed for bed, like he would make these competitions, and we thought we were just having fun, and really I look at it, I'm like, Dad, you just wanted us to like hurry up and get ready for bed.
Yeah.
But competition and being challenged and being pushed was in every aspect of our lives. So my dad's a naturopathic doctor. He does holistic type of work, also a nutritionist, and he was a bodybuilder way back in the day before I really was aware of that. But what I was aware of was his facility. He had a really beautiful gym, and also does like lifestyle mentorship and also relationship coaching. He does therapy with children. So he does a large variety of different things. But at a very young age, I was exposed to the gym. So like I remember being 7 years old and screaming at his clients, "One more rep, you can do it." You know, and they always would. Like it was awesome. So grew up in the gym environment. I remember when I was like, I don't remember how old I was, maybe like 7 or 8, I beat my brother Daniel at push-up contest.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
7 or 8 years old.
Yeah, I'll never let him like live that down, because now like my brothers are both badasses. They're both like, you know, one of them is like does things that we can't talk about. Another one's like an athlete, and like they're super badass. So it's the one win that I got to hold on to for the rest of my life as the sister.
Man. That's awesome. Are they older?
Yeah, well, one's older and one's younger.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I grew up in Houston, very competitive family. I had a really good childhood, and I also had a really challenging childhood.
Okay.
So growing up, I was able to experience the most amount of love that I think anyone could ever experience. And I really recognized how valuable that is, because I recognized that other people did not grow up with that much love coming from their parents and their environment. But on the other end, I also experienced my mother, who was very mentally ill and also very abusive in many ways to everybody. And so that experience definitely was just very challenging. It's something I've had to work on and grow through and, you know, forgive and heal in so many different ways. But that definitely set the tone for a lot of my life. When I was 16, I was a senior in high school. My parents got a divorce, and it was probably like the gnarliest, nastiest divorce that you could imagine. Like absolutely traumatic. So many things went on in there that I can't ever speak of, and it tore the whole family apart. So like this family, even though we had, you know, some difficult things happening at home, clearly, it was everything that I had ever known. And so everything I had ever known, the thing that like I thought would never leave in my life, was all of a sudden disintegrated. I was separated from all of my family. And it just led to a very difficult path for me. However, I just had such a drive and such a desire to make something out of my life because of it. At the age of 16, I was working multiple jobs. I actually graduated and I was in college at that age. I was supporting my mom. I was separated from all my siblings. So I was going through a lot of things, but I had this internal drive to create something for my life. And I just knew that if I could get into college, if I could get into Texas A&M, that I could create something out of my life, and I also could escape the absolute hell that I was living in. And I remember just working so hard and so long and trying to get that admission to Texas A&M for that next year of college. And I remember when I finally left the abusive situation with my mom, like for the last time, and granted I was the only one still in that situation, so I was like the last kid to leave. But I remember leaving that and driving to Texas A&M University, and on that drive just like breaking down crying, because I was like, holy shit, like I did it. I got out of the hardest time period, the loneliest time period of my life that I didn't know I would get out of. And that drive for me, it's like in the rearview mirror was all the things that tried to literally destroy me. And in front of me, literally on the road in front of me, was all the opportunity in the world simply because it was like a chance. It was a chance to do something with my life.
Yeah.
So fast forward to graduating, when I walked across that stage of Texas A&M University, that was one of the most proudest moments of my life because I was so young. Wow. I went through so much at such an early age, you know, and I put myself through school, and I worked so hard for it, and being able to achieve that was something I was really, really proud of. And then from there starts my fitness journey, but I'll stop because I know that was a lot.
First of all, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It gives a lot of context about where a lot of your drive comes from. And I mean, my goodness. So it was like your mid-teenage years, mid-high school years, when all that, when the family started to fall apart and things sounded pretty severe.
Yeah.
So during that time, though, while you were in high school, what role did sports, fitness, working out, what role did that play in your life?
Yeah, at that time it was team sports, and thankfully I went to a small school, so I got to do everything because I was very athletic, so I could just plug and play, you know, I'd figure it out. Yeah. Played volleyball, basketball, track and field, and it was everything to me. I remember, like, my dad was always my best friend, and he was also the one that, even in swim team, I remember I would be swimming in the middle of a race, and I would tone out everyone else's voice, and his voice was the one that I could hear.
That's cool.
And he would tell me, like, when to, like, kick it through all the way, and I would, and I'd win, and it was like such a cool relationship that we had, which is funny because then I remember the first basketball game that he didn't show up to because of everything going on. I was so angry, and I was so upset that I don't even remember what the record was, but I mean, I stole a record number of balls
That's sick.
from the other team. Everyone was like, is Emily okay? And they're like, shut up, it doesn't matter, we're winning.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a huge part of my life, and that's why when I went to college, I found weightlifting, because I missed team sports, and weightlifting, there was that just gave me like a platform to honestly move through a lot of the emotions that I didn't know how to move through. It was my way of coping and dealing with life. I'd go in the gym and I'd train so hard. Random people would come up to me and be like, I gotta know, what are you training for? And I'd be like, life, bro. Like, I'm trying to just, you know. And
at that point, were you in great shape, like coming out of high school, or did you really get into good shape in college?
Yeah, I mean, I was athletic, but I also started drinking heavily when I went to college. And in high school, I never partied. As soon as I got to college, I found drinking, and drinking was a lot of fun, and it was fun to go to parties with friends. And also, like, again, you just got to understand there's a whole lifetime of trauma that I was not dealing with, I guess. And so by drinking, I was able to, like, numb. Yeah. And I didn't consciously know that at the time. I just was like, wow, this is so much better than feeling all my feelings. Yeah. You know? And so I really got into the party scene heavily. And so I would say I looked like a fit girl that partied a lot. Wasn't healthy, right? But I still could have some abs, I don't really know. And then when I got through that and started really focusing on my health and really fueling myself properly and caring about this one body that I get, that's when I started to get in good shape. I would say I was in really good shape probably like junior year, and then senior years when I started to like body build with the intention of like building my body. Okay,
so let's talk about that transition and about the middle of college. But first, it sounds like going to Texas A&M was not really a focus of, okay, let's, you know, go, I want to major in this, I want to go do this for my career. It was more like to escape the life you had.
It was exactly both, actually, because I was incredibly career focused. I wanted to go to med school. I thought that I wanted to be a heart surgeon. I wanted to like literally fix people's hearts, which is funny because I feel like now that's the work that I do, but like in such a different way. Like when I was younger, I was so literal. I was like, I'm going to be a heart surgeon because I need to literally fix their hearts. And now, like in the space that I'm in, I do a lot of work. It's just very funny.
That is cool.
But I was in pre-med all the way through junior year of college. So I was very, like, even though I was partying and I was drinking, I never missed class. I had 8 a.m. class. Like, it was always so important to me. I was always such a good student. I literally led study groups. Like, it was such a focus of mine. I love learning, and I love, like, doing well at whatever it is that I'm doing. So that shifted when junior year of college, I changed my major and majored in sociology, which is cool because I started to study groups of people and why they adhere to programs and why they don't, which has been very beneficial in my career, actually, because I'm able to more easily understand like why groups of people do the things that they do.
Right.
Which, with now having a large audience, I think it helps me a lot in my career.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, certainly it makes sense to looking back at, given what you're doing now, but that transition. So you went from looking to go down a medical route and you transitioned to sociology. And at about that same time, you started taking fitness and your health much more seriously, right?
Yeah.
And did you step away from partying too? A little bit?
Yeah, so I had multiple jobs. I was a caregiver for a boy with autism for many years. I taught piano lessons, swim lessons, and then I was also a bartender. Okay. And throughout my later years of bartending, I stopped drinking because it just
You saw all the bullshit.
Yeah, I just saw all of it. I was like, this is unattractive to me now. So I stopped drinking. I still bartended. But then I just really started to enjoy challenging myself in the gym. I started setting random goals like, what's the highest box jump I can do? How many pull-ups can I do? And I was just achieving all my goals. And then someone said, hey, have you ever thought about doing a bikini competition? And I was like, oh my God, I wouldn't do that. They wear the smallest bikinis. Like, I was so like, I wouldn't do that. No. And then I kind of like looked into it and I was like, I was like, it's pretty cool how they can work so hard and then they get to like showcase their physiques, and it's all about consistent progress and evolution, which is very in alignment with what I'm about. And at that point, I was incredibly fit. I had muscle tone because I was trained really hard. I was very lean. Like it didn't take much to try it out. So I decided in 2013 to try out my first one, and I did my first NPC show, the Adela Garcia Classic, and I got third, and I had the best time, and I was hooked.
Nice. Okay, so that's awesome. So you wow. All right. Okay, so around that time, what was the landscape around fitness, social media influencers, YouTubers? This was, what, 2013?
2013.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was around that time when I personally started really getting into it, and one of the first people I really got into was Mike Rashid. All right, CT Flesher, right? Which you're friends with him, right?
Yeah. I just chatted to him the other day, actually.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm curious about what
I command you to grow.
Yes.
I got you.
Yeah, so those are the guys, right?
Yeah.
But because I played sports for the first couple years of college, and then I stopped because I had some back injuries, and then I got over that and started getting really into lifting, right? And I'm just curious, what was your perspective of the fitness influencer landscape at that point? Because I feel like, at least on the women's side of things, you're one of the OG fitness influencers. Is that fair to say?
I think a lot of people would say that.
Yep.
It's funny you ask, because at my first bodybuilding show, they're like, what's your Instagram backstage? Yeah. And I was like, what's that?
Oh.
And they were like, I was like, oh, that's the app that I edit my photos on. It's like you guys can see that? What? I literally thought it was like you just edit photos and then post it to Facebook.
Oh my gosh.
So like I had random photos that I just like edited to put on another platform. I didn't know that it was like a social thing. And they were like, you should totally post on there. Like, you do a lot of great things. I think you'd be helpful. Like, I remember people telling me that. And so after my first show, I opened my Instagram, like for real. And I just started posting what I was doing. And I posted things that I thought would be helpful or beneficial to others. And back in that day, it was so organic that if you posted and use certain hashtags like, fitness, health, nutrition, all the basic ones, literally everyone would see your post. And so I remember when I started posting, it was like once a day. And when I saw that like I was getting so much traction, I started posting 3 times a day. Wow. And so I would post morning, midday, and evening, sometimes more, but I think it was 3 times a day minimum. And I put a lot of effort into my captions. Like, you can even scroll back now and see, like, I was really putting all the effort into, 1, documenting my journey, because I wanted to document it, and I thought it, people enjoyed following it. But 2, I was always sharing, like, hey, this is really helping me to stay on my diet. This is helping me to get in shape. This has been beneficial. So I just kept sharing things that were were helpful. And I mean, it was growing like 1,000 real people a day. Like,
wow.
And I'm talking real people, and I was getting an influx of messages and comments, and I was just like, whoa, it was like a wildfire started.
Wow.
It was really cool. And I never set out, I didn't even know what an influencer was. There was never a goal to be an influencer. It was just like, this is a cool thing where I'm connecting with a lot of people. And then what's cool is that opened up an opportunity for me to move my business online, because at the time I was full-time personal training. I literally worked 1 million hours a week. And one thing I realized with that is that nothing that I did would ever be like good enough for the higher ups. They'd set a goal, I'd reach it, it'd be like, cool, do this next time. Like no matter what, it just, and also there was a ceiling to where I could go working for someone else. And so I decided to move my business online, open up my first coaching offer, and I immediately had a business online.
Wow. Okay. So when you started getting all this traction on Instagram, when did YouTube come in?
That was, I believe, 2014. I wanted to document my journey to pro. And so I started documenting my preps, and I would share literally what I was eating, what I was training, just documenting everything. And that was really cool because it gained such an audience that they were so heavily impacted by, one, my training videos, but two, they were just involved in my journey. So when I went to nationals, I felt like I had so much support. Like so many people cared and were asking questions like, oh my gosh, how did it go? And then I remember getting runner-up to my pro card multiple times, and it's like the whole internet was like, oh my gosh, you totally had that. Like they were in it with me. And then when I finally went pro in 2016, after 14 shows and 7 national shows, I really had to grind for it. The whole internet cried. It's back when, what was that app? What was that app that was like the first live app? Do you remember what it was called? I can't remember what it was called. It was a platform where you could tell does it start with a T? Did you know what that was? It was like one of the first platforms where you could go live, and so people could come watch you live. And so we went live for my show, and like, I'm talking thousands of people were crying, myself included. Like in a good way. Like, oh my God, you finally did it. Oh my gosh. Like, because I always told them, I was like, you literally just have to believe in yourself and then not quit. That's literally it. Like, believe in yourself. Do not quit. Work as hard as you possibly can. Be undeniable today, right now, in this moment, in this workout, in this rep, in this gram of rice that you're eating. Like, be so undeniable that when you finally get to that moment, it's yours. And so sharing that journey and sharing the ups and downs, like, people got to see a tangible experience of when you have that unwavering belief in yourself, when you put in the hard work consistently, you place significance on the small things every single day. It happens.
Wow. That's incredible. I'm curious, during this time when you got started really taking social media and YouTube seriously, and you were doing competitions, right? In bodybuilding, what had a bigger impact on your day-to-day life? Was it the attention you were getting from social media and the work you were putting into that? Or was it the kind of main work of working on your body and preparing for these competitions and getting, placing and finishes?
It was the community.
The community, okay.
Yeah, like the
great answer.
The actual prep, like you mentioned, the workout and the diet and whatever, that was for me. It wasn't for anyone else. Like that was like my time. And then it was a cool platform to be able to share with the community and build a community and connect with other people that were in the same kind of realm. Right. So, but for me, what had a bigger impact 1000% was the people that I was connecting with. Like, it meant the world to me, and I would always have like deep talks on my YouTube channel, which is why we'll get into the podcast next. But like, I always had deep talks on my YouTube channel. So like, when people came to me, I wasn't just like, here's my workout, here's my food. I'm talking about real life shit. Like, really, like, what kept it 100%. Like, I shared my whole heart without any like fear of what people would say or think. Like, I was pretty fearless back then, probably more than I am now, like after having been through some things. But back then I was just so like real that I think it really attracted people who desired that in their life. And they knew when they came to me that they were going to get like the real thing. Wow. Okay. That's an awesome answer. And I have a question off of that, just off the community piece. Who were some of the first people that came into your life that were the biggest influences for you, looking back today, have lasted the longest, had the biggest impact? I think those are two different questions. Like who were the first, and then maybe who's had lasting impacts.
Fair enough.
Because those are kind of maybe different.
You're right. Yeah.
But I can talk to maybe like the competing world. I remember when I was competing, the OGs for me were like Amanda Latona, Natalia Mello, even Courtney King. She came before me, which is cool because she made a comeback years later. So those were the competitors and people in the industry that I looked up to. And I remember meeting Amanda Latona, and it was probably one of the times that I got a little like, oh my gosh, like it's Amanda Latona, you know? Yeah, because I really looked up to her, and I typically don't get that way with people, but with her, like she really made a positive impact on me. So that was really cool. As far as lasting impact, someone that, I guess a few people that immediately come to mind. Number one's probably Andy Frisella. He's the owner of First Form.
One of my favorite people.
Yeah, mine too. I've had a lasting relationship with First Form and with him for over a decade now. And he's just like such an incredible leader. And some of the lessons that he's taught me have really carried me through in so many different seasons of my life. And he's definitely not ever going to sugarcoat literally anything to you. So it's not like an easy relationship, you know?
Sure.
But it's a real one, and it's truthful, and it's the one that makes you better. It's the one that calls you higher. And I just really appreciate that. And I say Andy, because we've had that relationship, but obviously a lot of people at First Form have really, really positively impacted me. And I'm so grateful for that relationship. A lot of my sponsors are people that I really align with on such a deep level that I've been with them for like a decade now. I guess I would say another one, Christian Guzman. He's the owner of Alpha Elite. He is someone who started out as literally just this kid in college who started posting on YouTube. And he's always believed in himself, and he's always cared about people and always cared about creating community for people. And what he's done now is just absolutely mind-blowing. Like he is someone who is a trailblazer, a visionary, and so I feel that that's a long-lasting relationship who I'm just always inspired by. I'm always inspired to see the next thing that he's doing. You know, we used to travel together as a team and do like world tour stuff, so we had a close relationship, and over the years, you know, we're in our own elements doing our own things, but even from afar I'm just always inspired. Like he just went and he got so close to winning his pro card at nationals, which is really dope to see, because he has so many businesses. I don't even know if you can count them at this point. And what he's doing for the fitness industry is really beautiful. He's really paved a way for other people that aspire to do what he's done, to have a safe place to do that. Like Alpha Land in Houston is the gym that he's created. And I say gym very lightly. It's more like a Disneyland for people into fitness.
Sure.
But it's just cool. He's creating opportunity for a lot of people. So I'm definitely really inspired by that.
Wow. So when did those sponsorships come? Did they come around the same time?
First Form was first. That was end of 2013 or 2014. And then Alpha Elite, I believe the official sponsorship was 2015 maybe. Yeah. But so it was a couple of years after.
But it was like right around the time when you were getting your pro card. You were deep into competing, and you had built a following on social media. And
on Instagram and on YouTube at that point.
What do you think it was that made these companies want to work with you? I mean, beyond a following, that's like probably the obvious first answer, right? She has a following, she's competing. How else would you answer that?
Well, for those two brands in particular, I can tell you. So for First Form, they care about people who align with their core values. So are you a good person? Are you doing the right thing? Are you actually trying to help people? Are you making a real impact in this world? They couldn't give two shits about a big number or what you look like. It's what's the impact that you're making. So our core values aligned. I remember when I read their core values online, because I always do that to like vet out companies. I was like, did they take my journal and like write this out? Because it's literally about someone who has an unwavering belief in themselves to go after the craziest of goals, to go after their dreams and their visions, and to help everyone else along the way, like to help people and actually care. So that's why that partnership has worked for so long. For Alpha Elite, it was really cool because that wasn't on my radar, but I contacted Christian and asked him if I could host a posing clinic at his gym. It was like the OG Alpha Elite gym. And he was like, yeah, sure. So I was like, cool. I just needed the space. It was like a business thing.
Yeah.
And I hosted my retreat, and it wasn't a retreat back then. It was a posing clinic and Q&A. But afterwards, Christian pulled me aside and he was like, hey, I have been watching you and your interaction with these girls and your impact with these girls. And an Alpha Elite is someone who inspires people to dream more, be more, and do more. And that's literally you. And I'd be honored to have you on the team. Wow. And it just like came to me, and I was like, wow. I mean, yes, I don't know much about Alpha Elite, but that sounds great. Like, you know, incredible. It's what I aim to do. I aim to inspire. I aim to show people the way. I aim to make a real impact in this world. So yeah, let's join forces.
Wow. And so did they get to know that side of you, that you aligned with their values through would you say it was the content you were putting out when you were being very vulnerable early on?
Yeah, I think both. I think obviously for Christian, that was in person. So he got to in person observe me, and then also I'm sure he checked out all my socials, you know. And then with First Form, a mixture of both, you know. I was really putting myself out there so they could check all of that out. And then when I was going to HQ and visiting, they got to experience me in person as well. So I think it's just a natural relationship building. And two, I think that people are smarter than we give them credit for. Like, you can't really present this idea of who you are when people have like real lived experiences of you, right? So like, how you know who someone is, literally just observe them in real life, because anyone can present anything online. They can present to be a certain person, even in podcasting, right? Like, I could sit here and say all the right things, but if I'm like a shitty person in real life, like you're going to experience that at a certain point. So I think it's a mixture of both but also I just think even if you are faking it when you're on a platform of any sort, I think people are smart enough to sniff that out these days.
Oh yeah. And let me just second that, actually, because when I met Emily, I met you a few months ago or so through jiu-jitsu, and I just remember, you know, I didn't know who you were at that point, but you approached me and you were just so down to earth. And I was like, okay, this girl's cool as hell. And then I realized, I found out who you were after, right? And how accomplished you are and how well known you are. And it just makes that experience stand out so much more, right? So when you do that to people, you keep it up.
Thank you.
It shows the kind of person you are, and that's incredible.
I appreciate that. And I feel like that's a reflection that just sits a little bit deeper right now, because sometimes people can judge you for so many different things. And I feel like I had a period in my life where I went through a lot of things, really difficult, traumatic type of things, and it made me close that part of myself off a little bit. And within the last 2 years, I've really been aiming to open up even more and to just be who I am. And who I am is to smile and to introduce myself to people. And so I'm seeking to really live that out in my life and not allow the fear of others or the judgment of others to hold me back from sharing my kindness and my heart and just who I am with people.
I love that.
So thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's true. And I say I didn't know who you were at that point. I probably have watched your videos years ago and just didn't connect the dots. So who knows?
That's awesome.
Anyway, but I want to transition into your businesses. Okay. So amazing background with how, you know, you grew up and then your professional career in bodybuilding and how your sponsorships came about. But you've got a few things going on. And I know there's coaching, mentorship that you've done, that you're doing. And I'll put that in your court of how you want to talk about that, because it sounds like you're kind of doing some rebranding. The two big things right now, it sounds like, are your podcast, Evolve with Emily, and your retreats, the wellness retreats. So maybe let's start with the podcast. This is obviously something I'm very personally interested in. I'm trying to build a podcast myself. And
you already have.
Thank you.
Don't forget that. As entrepreneurs, we're always like, oh, I really want to do this. And then you look and you're like, I'm actually already doing it.
That's a good point.
I've even done that in my finances before when I'm going back through things. I'm like, man, I just need to make this, da da da. And then I reorganize everything. And I was like, oh, I'm already doing that.
And by the way, that's such a good point, because I've been catching up with your podcasts recently since you got it going again. But that's just one thing that I notice you really focus on, is being present, stopping, kind of like our meditation before this podcast, right? And appreciating that part, and then getting answers, because the answers are all within us, right? It's just a matter of how do you pull them out. And so
good.
Yeah, and so I think that aligns with the point you just made about, hey, it's here. We're doing it, right?
Yeah.
So when did you start your podcast, and how did you start it?
Such a good question. I love talking about this. So I was on Instagram, and then after Instagram for quite a while, I was like, you know what? I want a different platform to express myself in a different way. So I moved to YouTube. I got to be face to face with people. When YouTube subscribers are watching like a 10-minute, 15-minute, 20-minute video, they're spending a lot of time with you. And I got to show people how I was living my life. Back then, I feel so old saying that, but back then Instagram didn't have like reels or stories or anything like that. Right. It was like just, it was a photo post and a caption. So what I would do is I would post a photo that I thought would get people to look at it. And then once I had their eyeballs, then in the caption, I would share my heart. And like back then, man, I'm putting my heart and soul out there in the captions, like just really putting everything out there. And so when I found video, I could sit down, I could look at the camera and look into the camera and literally like speak to who it was that I was speaking to. And that was so special for me. But after a while, you know, YouTube is a video platform. So after a while, it's like you can't, most people aren't going to watch a video too long if you're like saying, you know, a whole long talking spiel. Like they want to see what you're doing. But then I had a bunch of people say, hey, have you ever thought about starting a podcast? Which now that I'm looking back at my journey, a lot of the things that I've done have been from other people, like kind of planting the seed, so to speak. So if anyone's listening, plant those seeds in other people. Maybe it's someone that needs to hear it, you know? So I was like, no, I haven't. I don't really do podcasting. I don't get it. Like, whatever. I'm always like late to the train, I feel like. But what happened was there is this one woman, her name is Lori Harder, and I had found her on Instagram, and I really connected with what she was doing on Instagram. I really loved her posts. And eventually I was like, okay, she has this podcast thing. Let me just click on it. So finally I click on an episode and I listen, and I like fall in love with her deeper in such a deep way through one episode. And then it clicked. And I was like, oh, I had no idea that I aligned with her on such a deep level, simply because I didn't turn on her podcast. But now having a platform where she's literally just speaking to me, almost as if it's a voice note on your phone, like I was able to create such a deep connection, such a deeper connection with her, and also learn from her. Oh my gosh, she still is a great podcaster. If people don't know who she is, like definitely look her up. But so after that, I was like, oh, I need to make this connection with my people. I have this whole community of people, and there is so much untapped within me. I know that I could really help people's lives by sharing things that I've been through, sharing my perspective, you know, and just having another platform to express myself. So then I started, oops, sorry. I just kicked my mic for people punched it for people not watching. So then I started my podcast December 2018. It was a solo podcast for, I believe, 100 episodes. I never missed an episode. And then from there I went into interviews, and I was doing really dope interviews in a studio in LA. And then I moved to Texas. I had a studio at my house, and that brings me to recently, a couple months ago, all of my podcast equipment was stolen out of my car. And it was just I actually just gotten back from a podcast tour where I had all these amazing podcasts in, I did one in San Diego, a few in Arizona, a few in Vegas and LA. I just came back from this amazing tour. It was super on fire. I was like, I'm going to restart my solo episodes. I know what I need to do. And then I left my stuff in the trunk of my car because I'd unloaded everything in the car itself. And then, everything was stolen. And that caused me to pause. And a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, let's get your stuff back right away. Let's like take all this action. And I was like, no, this happened for a reason, and I need to figure out why. I need to sit with this for a minute. So instead of jumping straight into fixing it, jumping straight into action, I paused. I was like, let me take a step back. Let me tune in with myself. Like you mentioned, those answers that are within. Let me see if this is a direction that I need to go, or if this is the universe telling me to go a different direction altogether. I was willing to walk away from it if I felt like that's where I was being led. And I needed to know the answer for myself. I needed to know for sure that it was something I needed to return to. So I took time away from the podcast, and then I was a guest speaker at an event. My friend Nick Comodina had this event in San Diego called Rise. And there I was able to meet podcast subscribers. Yeah, podcast right?
Listeners, subscribers, fans.
I always, when I'm talking about all platforms, I get so confused.
Right.
But yeah, people that listen to the show, I did my speaking gig it was like an hour speaking gig, and then I got to talk to them. And the reflections that they shared with me, I was just like, oh my gosh, what I do is so important.
Yeah.
And not with a level of like, oh, self-importance. It's not that at all. It's like this deep understanding and recognition that the things that I share and what I do impacts people. And if it's actually impacting people, I will, come hell or high water, I will do it.
Wow.
And I just needed that reminder that it's impacting. Because after being on platforms for so many years, after having so many ups and downs, sometimes you question things, you know? And especially with the influx of like starting on Instagram, when it was like insane amount of contact with your audience all the time. Like people are always DMing you and messaging you. When that slows down, it's hard to navigate that. Sometimes you feel like, oh, maybe it's not making an impact. Maybe it's not important. Maybe people don't care anymore. Yeah. And those were the honest thoughts and feelings that I was navigating. Wow. And when I was able to meet people in person who, oh my goodness, shared the most beautiful reflections of me about how my journey, my podcast has impacted them, I was like, there's not a chance in hell am I going to quit this. Yeah, like I have to keep going. And literally the next day I started the podcast again on my phone. No equipment still.
Wow. I love that. That's so, and by the way, guys, Emily has an episode that describes in detail the story of her getting her equipment stolen. And she talks in detail about everything she just shared, and over the course of a few episodes throughout July in 2023, which is where we're in. I guess it's August now, but I encourage you guys to listen. It's a pretty wild story, and thank you for sharing that. It's motivating to me because I'm trying to juggle this, right? I've still got my full-time job, and trying to figure out. My whole thing is I'm not going to stop this, right? I'm this first year I'm focused on staying consistent. I'm not going to get distracted by numbers or feedback or whatever, but it's encouraging to, especially going through that step of pausing when something traumatic like that happens. And then you got your reassurance, your validation in the best way possible. People showing up to this event that you spoke at saying, we love this, we need this. Yeah, and that in-person interaction I really needed. Like, as being someone who's been online for so many years, there's this sense of connection, but it also created a deep sense of disconnection at times in my life, because it's like so many people know who you are, but yet very few people like take the time to deeply know you. And that's also a weird place to be in. But when I just felt disconnected from my audience. I hadn't been in person with them. I hadn't done events. I hadn't done speaking gigs. I hadn't had an in-person interaction. So literally it just took one to change that and remind me like, oh yeah, there are real people out there. It's not this fake app with no one listening. Like people care. It helps, And I think that's actually a great transition into your retreats. So when did you come up with the idea to start putting together these in-person retreats to these locations? You just had one in Hawaii, on Oahu, where I grew up. So cool. I can't believe you grew up there. And then you've got one later this year in Iceland, right? Yes, and next month. I can't believe it's next month. Next month? Wow. Okay, you're busy. Yeah, so when did this idea come about? Was it in relation to what you just described around how important having these in-person interactions are to you in light of the years of kind of being well-known online? I think it came from a desire to stop talking about evolving and to literally show them. Cool. I thought in my, because I started this Evolve with Emily brand. It started as a YouTube series back in 2017 when I was going through this next hardest season of my entire life. And I knew that I had two options: either accept life as is and make no changes and forever give up the dream and the potential of what my life could be, or I could choose to face some really difficult situations and conversations and make really difficult changes in my life in efforts to evolve into who I knew I could always be. So that YouTube series
then went into being a podcast, went into a coaching program. And then from there, I was like, I'm done talking about it. I want to show them. I'm going to create a weekend experience where I literally purposely and intentionally stack up different experiences throughout the days that will literally help them evolve in a matter of days.
Wow.
And it did. That first one that I did was in 2018.
Okay.
And I just called it like it was the tangible experience of evolving.
Yeah.
And it was really beautiful to watch girls come in. That time it was female only, like women only. And that first one, I believe there was around like 30 people or so.
Yeah.
And it was in LA. And I got to watch people come into this and like start shy and kind of just, you know, they were like still in their shells. And then fast forward to the end of the 3 days, it was a quick one. At the end of the 3 days, these women are taking up space and they're bright and they're electric and they're magnetic and they're feeling like so confident to be exactly who they are, flaws and all. And it was the most like I cried the entire weekend, I think, just because it was so beautiful, like watching them break through things over and over again, like everything that I wanted for them to feel more confident and more clear, to know themselves in a deeper way, to feel connected to themselves, to each other, to God, to explore and to grow. Like it all happened exponentially, more actually than I could have planned for.
Right.
And that moment in that retreat for me, that first one, was like, oh, this is what you're meant to be doing.
Wow.
Like, this is it. Everything else was leading up to this, but like, that was it. That's what being in flow is like. Like you know, people always say like, find a skill, find something that you are so good at, like undeniably good at. And I never really like knew what mine was. It's like, I'm hardworking, I'm dedicated, I can, you know, build communities online. Like I can do all these things, but I never really knew what was like special, I guess you could say, until that. When I had quite a few reflections, even from like my assistant or my brother, who like after a workshop session where just in the moment I would think of these ways to have them connect with each other, these prompts or these questions, and afterwards they would reflect, they were like, how did you do that? Like you are incredibly skilled at that. And I felt it. Like when they said it, I knew that it was true. It was real, because I didn't like pre-plan what I was going to do or say. I had an idea, but when I got in the moment, there was just this flow where I was like, wow, this is what it's like to be in flow and to be living your dharma, like living what you were literally created to do.
Gosh. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a really good feeling.
Yeah. So you really realize how impactful you are, how powerful you are in person, getting real with people.
I think what I'm able to do is create a really safe place and a safe space for people to open up and be willing to see themselves. And also, because of the tone that I intentionally set, they're able to do that with each other. And so it creates this really beautiful environment for personal growth and discovery, but also for deep connections with others, with people that you just met, that all of a sudden you feel so deeply connected to in such a real way. So I love creating those moments for people and holding that space for them and allowing them to feel so loved and so valued in all of this, everything that makes them them. And not in a fake unicorn way by any means. I don't sugarcoat anything. Like I tell my people the truth, but I really do help them to embrace the fact that we all have flaws, we all have things we're really proud of and things that we're not, and I help them learn how to heal through those things, accept those things, embrace them, and then to grow and to choose to be the next best version of themselves.
So can you tell us a little bit about what someone can expect for an agenda or the experience in Iceland coming up, or in Hawaii recently?
Yeah,
one of your retreats?
So a little day in the life of a retreat attendee in Hawaii, for example. We would wake up pretty early and we'd head down to this really beautiful spot, and basically I would call them evolve sessions. Okay. So there'd be one evolve session in the morning, and then we would do like breakfast, the main adventure for the day. I'm all about adventure and fun and playtime as well. You know, food, and then evolve session 2. So in those evolve sessions, there will be different things that we do. Often it'll be a mixture of yoga, breath work, meditation, visualization, individual journaling prompts, and working on some things that I guide people through. And then also connective partner exercises as well. So a mixture of sharing and reflecting, holding space for others, learning how to listen and hold that safe space, and also learning how to be seen. And it's a really powerful experience. You know, some sessions are more focused on the breath work itself, yourself. Some are more meditative. Some are more focused on like, okay, we need to do some pen to paper journaling prompts and really like let you see these things on paper.
Yeah.
We do a lot of like letting go, and we identify like what's holding us back, right? We let go of those things. We set our intentions moving forward. And then one thing I always like to do as well is integration. So whether that integration is a part of the retreat, which often I talk a little bit about it, but also like I just did the integration call for Hawaii today, actually. So I got all the girls on a call and we did a Zoom call, and we just talk about how to integrate everything that we did at the retreat.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because it's really important to me that people don't come and have this very elated experience.
Yeah.
You know, we're in a beautiful setting. We're around people that are going to love and embrace you. Like, I'm setting the tone, so it's a very like safe space. It's hard to go from that back into real life, back into the roommate that's a jerk, back to the work environment that triggers you. Like, there's all these things that you get back into. So I think it's important to really set the tone to say, okay, how do we integrate and how do we live out what we said we were going to live out when we were in such a great state?
Yeah.
So it was a really cool call. Like, I love doing integration because it, again, just helps people to remember that we're always going to have moments of slipping back into old patterns and old beliefs. It's just the work of remembering that we're doing it, being aware, like, oh yeah, I'm doing that thing again. I'm stepping back into an old pattern. I'm stepping back into negative thinking, and then reframing that and choosing intentionally how you want to believe, think, and act moving forward, and just course correcting with love.
Yep. I love it. So you really have a framework that you go off of, and then that's so key to make sure that people don't just have a great experience and then forget about it when they go back to real life.
Totally. Yeah.
Check in a few weeks later.
I will say though, like I don't think that people could come to my retreat and forget about it. I genuinely don't.
Okay.
Because even one of the girls on the call today, she said that her best friend was like, "You're different." Literally told her, "You're different after this retreat," like in an amazing way, like changed. And so I would be very shocked if someone could come. I mean, they would have to come and like close their ears and their eyes. Like, they'd have to like really try not to.
Oh yeah.
Like, the things that we unlocked, and it's not me, and it's not the retreat, and it's not something special. But if someone comes with an open mind and an open heart, and they allow themselves to be open to the experience, the changes and the shifts that they make are at an internal level. It's not a mindset level of, I'm going to try to set these goals and be this person. There's things that happen at such a deep level that it literally just changes who they are. Yeah.
Incredible. Well, guys, check out Evolve with Emily Retreats. It sounds pretty profound what she's doing there.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention, they are co-ed. So the previous retreats had been women only.
Okay.
And I think it's really beautiful to have the male presence there, both the male and the female, to really balance each other out.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful to watch men that are willing to do the work on themselves, that are willing to heal and to look at these parts that they want to improve. And also, I think it's very healing for those same men to see women that are seeking to be their best and to heal and to improve and to be a better partner. And I think there's just a lot of healing that can happen by having both the male and the female presence there.
For sure.
So I'm really excited. Iceland is going to be my first co-ed retreat.
Oh,
so
got it.
I'm looking forward to that.
Nice. That's exciting.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, actually, can you push that down a little bit?
Yes.
There you go. Okay.
Got it.
How would you describe the biggest challenge or challenges you've experienced generally, more so from a business standpoint? I'm sure it overlaps into personal, but what would you say those are over the past 8 to 10 years or so of doing business, building these different, your brand, right? The podcast, the retreats, working with your sponsors.
The biggest challenge, let's see. I think the fact that it's just always changing. Literally, the game is always changing. And so one thing I've had to get really good at is being adaptable. I think 2020 really showed us that. Like, if you don't adapt and if you don't get with it, you're going to get left behind. But there's always an opportunity to learn and to adapt. So even if you feel like, oh my God, I missed it, you never really did truly miss it. It's always a good opportunity to shift and to move into like what's happening. But for me also, one thing I'm trying to be better about is not hearing about something for a long time before I take action on it. Like even the podcast, right? I heard podcasting was a thing, and the truth is I just didn't get it. And I should have. I don't have regrets, right? Everything happens when it's supposed to happen.
Sure.
However, if I'm hearing that it's like a really big thing, people are mentioning that I would do well on it, I think now I would research it and I would look into it and I would see if maybe it's something I want to do. Before I'm just like so busy and I'm traveling, I just never looked into it. And I imagine had I started my podcast a couple of years ago, you know, so I think I would just take more intentional action immediately when I'm hearing about what might be the next shift. You know, like getting ahead of the curve rather than like catching up from the back of the line. Yeah. Which I feel like I've done a lot in my life. And then also just, again, that unwavering belief. I have struggled so much in my entrepreneurial journey with believing in my business and in my journey, and not in believing in what I do. That's never been a question for me. Like, I know what I'm here on earth to do, but it's been like all the realistic challenges or the times when like clients are low and all of a sudden I'm not making the income that I used to make. It's like, should I switch? Should I go get something that's stable? You know, and that's been something that I've really like just kind of teetered throughout the year. So that's been, I think, the biggest challenge is like not giving up on it.
Yeah. Because it's so up and down.
Yes,
right?
it's not, you know, it's not stable. It's not like you're getting a check every 2 weeks, or like in my position, you know, a sponsor the next month could be like, oh yeah, we're good, we're done. And then you go from making X amount to that whole chunk is just gone immediately. So I think for me in my position, it's been learning and recognizing how I can keep more control of my own income and not place my, you know, my bread and butter, so to speak, on my sponsors. Really making sure that that's in my control. That way, you know, I don't ever have to be in fear of losing a sponsor.
Well said. And it's such valuable insight too. Gosh, I love that point you made about jumping on something when you hear from others that you should because they see something special in you, or the trend is starting to happen. Right. That was also my issue. I heard the same thing about my podcast, and it took me a year after I knew, okay, I need to do this, of hesitating, right? Totally. What's going to happen if I put my voice out there, right? All these doubts that come to you. So I'm a huge fan of that one. But this is actually, everything you just said is really related to a signature question I ask at the end of every episode, which is, what's an entrepreneurial life hack that you have in mind that's unique to you, that's against the mainstream belief, is how I describe it. You kind of gave a decent answer to that already with what you just said, but maybe you have a more pointed answer.
The hack, I think, is going to be unique to me because I know myself and I know what I'm like without this and I know what I'm like with it. So my own personal hack is community, even if it's only one other entrepreneur, right? So me, if I'm isolated and alone in my journey, you know, with my own business, that gets very hard and feels like a lot very quickly. And I realize that just for who I am as a person, I don't know why, and this is not right or wrong, but like just if I schedule a work date with a friend and they're working on their business and I'm working on my business, we can like, you know, bounce things off each other sometimes. That drastically changes my whole experience, and it really helps me to stick with it, to believe in myself, to feel motivated and inspired and also supported. So for me, it's been community, even if that's just one other person.
Wow. Good answer.
Thank you.
Love it. Oh, well, Emily, this has been amazing. I'm so thankful for you to come on the Nichols and Dime Show and share your story and what you've learned along the way. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I think mindfulness is coming to mind right now. And especially for people that are running their own business, we can get really caught up in the to-do list and executing, which is amazing. We should do all those things. But one of the most productive things that you could do for the results you're seeking to create is actually create some time and space for yourself to focus on presence and on stillness. Because going back to what you mentioned earlier, those answers truly are within us. Right. I've had so many times where I'm like, okay, I just need to work, hustle, kill, and I need to like get my whole list done today. And then I'll pause and I'll say, you know what, let me just do a 5-minute meditation like we did before the show. And I do a 5-minute meditation. And then because by that point, I'm so deep into my meditation, I often do another meditation right after, just solo, like just background music. And I'll just go through my own experience, and I've been practicing meditation for a long time, so I can even like guide myself through it. And so I'll guide myself through like, okay, and I'll start it like you're walking up to the highest version of yourself who has that business of your desires, right? And then she says, and then I just pause and I let it all come. And then all of a sudden it's this whole dialogue. It's this whole thing. Yeah. And I get the answers that I was looking for. And I just needed to take time and space for myself. So if you guys haven't looked into meditation, it doesn't have to be scary or daunting. There's this channel that we just did right before this called Great Meditation on YouTube. Okay. And they have a bunch of like 5-minute ones, 10-minute ones. So just put a 5-minute one on, start your practice, and see how that impacts your energy, your presence, and your focus for your business.
Well said.
Thanks.
Very cool. Is there anyone you have in mind who you would recommend I have on my show? And it could be anyone building something, right? I have entrepreneurs of all different sorts on here.
I think you should have my friend Nick Comodino on the show.
Okay.
Yeah, he's incredible. He's been on this journey for a long time, and he is in the impact service industry. So really focused on making an impact. There's a lot that he could share about business and systems and more strategy for sure. But yeah, I think you should check him out.
Okay, I'll follow up with you on that.
Cool.
That'd be awesome. All right, could you share your social media? How can people find Emily Hayden online and see everything that you're up to?
Yeah, they can just search my name, Emily Hayden, Hayden, on Instagram, Evolve with Emily, on podcast, evolvewithemilyretreats.com, or just Evolve with Emily Retreats on Instagram. But if you go to my main Instagram page, it has all the links.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Well, Emily, thank you again so much. I thought this turned out amazing.
Yeah, me too. I'm so glad we did this, and I'm so glad it worked, and I'm so glad that you took those extra 5 minutes when you were like, I think we can get this. Right?
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I'm super happy about it. Alrighty, well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this, and Emily, well, I'm excited to get to know you better and see your continued success.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for joining our conversation today on the Nichols and Dimes Show. Please check out and follow my podcast Instagram at nicholsanddimeshow. I'd love to have you subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or YouTube. You can also find it on my website. I welcome and encourage any feedback you can share in the reviews so I can continue to improve and develop the show. Thanks again, and see you next time.